You know what's crazy about that? They're not covering their faces. Like
Yeah.
so many, I think that they are not covering their faces, which I think is like very significant in this context.
What is a transgender movement? Are you telling me that every single trans person is in like a secret group chat? You have the Trump administration blaming this on the left, and then I think some people on the left who are online enough to understand what a Groper is saying this has nothing to do with us.
No, he's one of yours. No, he's one of yours. It's this like your team. No, your team. Like this need for things to be really clear cut. There's been this kind of war for I guess the war for the minds of young white men.
This is my personal opinion, right? Because you said yours. I'm going to say my personal opinion. So if you are not familiar with Tess, you have been living under a rock, but I will do a very brief introduction. Tess, colleague of mine back during the Vice days, but Tess Owen has been writing about extremism and the right and a whole lot of other things. You've seen her stuff, obviously, in Vice, The Guardian. Where am I missing? I know you've written for a lot of different places.
Wired, New York Mag, New Yorker.
A lot of places. A lot of places.
Yeah, Religion News Service. Yeah, a lot of places.
Yeah. So again, we're speaking here about the shooting of Charlie Kirk, which was just last week. It feels like it's been even longer. What are you seeing now?
Okay, so if you see, I have an insane note stock for this, just because
Ooh,
I
okay,
wanted to, just so I wanted to make sure, because obviously it's important to get things right in
Yeah.
this day and age that we're in. It feels like everyone has completely lost their minds. I mean, on the
Mm.
right, especially. Like I was just looking at a Libs of TikTok post, um, where they're shaming a Starbucks barista for not writing Charlie Kirk's name on cups when asked. Which is like, why are people going around? So like, yeah, why?
Sorry,
What?
no.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah.
It's- People are asking. No, sorry. Just do it. Yeah, you already broke my brain. We're 2 minutes in. Sorry, say it again. Shaming a barista for
Yeah,
doing
so
what?
people are going around, I guess, asking at Starbucks, their Starbucks order to have Charlie Kirk's name, and versus like Starbucks is saying no, it's too political.
You need a name.
The name is Charlie Kirk.
We can't do political names, but it didn't even ask for a name to begin with, so it's gonna be $3.75. Okay?
Oh, but can you write the name on the cup?
The sticker won't print.
Oh, you can't write on it?
I could, but I can write Charlie, and it's going to be $3.75 today.
You know what? Forget it. I don't want it.
What is this? This is ridiculous. You know what? People should be boycotting Starbucks as it is, but definitely boycott this location.
But I'm like people need to pull themselves together. Why are you going around asking for Charlie Kirk's name? Like okay, if you're sad, blah 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 blah. But this feels like insanity. It feels like insanity.
What? I'm sorry. Okay, you know what? Let's just jump right into it. Let's jump into the deep end. Why would you go to a Starbucks and ask somebody to write a name on the cup if it's not your name? If it's your name, if your name's Charlie Kirk, okay, weird coincidence. But like, why would one do that? Am I misreading this? Is this just like a provocation thing? Like, oh, we can catch the person saying they won't do it, so they're being disrespectful?
That's what I think. I mean, it's all part of this like online environment, like kind of starting from like the moments after Kirk was shot. You know, some people on the left were celebrating. Some people were quite quick to point out that he has a history of extremely bigoted views. And basically anyone who has been perceived as insulting him, not being very nice about his death, there's kind of this witch hunt that's been happening of people who aren't honoring his death. So there's a whole thing now going after NFL teams which aren't honoring his death. Now Starbucks baristas, there's this massive witch hunt happening where people are compiling lists. I think they've said they've got over 60,000, probably by now 100,000 names of people online who they are planning to expose in this publicized document. People are losing their jobs. It's nuts. For lack of a better
Yeah.
word.
So, I mean, pretty quickly, fairly soon after, you were reporting on. So you've got an article in the Guardian, which I'll pull up here. So this came out, you wrote this article the day after, right? Because this was already happening, right? Or this article published the day after, right? Because this was already happening.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Yes. That's right. That's right.
right. So the article is entitled "Far-Right Commentators Echo Trump in Calling for, quote, vengeance and retribution for Charlie Kirk's death, even as the suspect and motive remain unknown." At that point, that was true. Incendiary rhetoric from major political commentators spread rapidly online, and Trump blamed the left. So I've highlighted this up a little bit here, but tell me about this. You're writing about, again, just the first article, the first line in your article here. Within hours of Charlie Kirk being shot dead at a college event in Utah, he had been turned into a far-right martyr in the U.S.'s raging culture war. And many prominent right-wing voices and influencers were basically characterizing this as an act of war from the left and have vowed to respond in kind. Tell me about what you were seeing.
So I've written a lot of these kind of reaction pieces, or like, here's what the right is saying, here's what the fringes are saying. Whenever, like, I don't know, Trump gets indicted, or to the, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another example. There's so many. Anyway, there's always these kind of like quick turn reaction pieces,
Right.
and often in the past, the kind of rhetoric of like the stuff about war is the stuff that I see on like the fringes, on like the anonymous message boards, and then in the mainstream, you're seeing a softer version of that. It is some version of that, but it's much, much softer. And what was wild to me, that I didn't really need to look at the fringes, because everything that was so shocking was being said in the political mainstream by very influential commentators
Right.
and leaders.
Yeah.
That honestly alarmed me so much, like so much more than I can really even express.
I hadn't thought of that, because I've seen you do that. I've seen you write those articles where, I don't know, Trump gets elected, or Trump makes some decision, or just any sort of small thing happens, and there's a bunch of just weirdo, very, very, very fringe groups. I mean, groups that would consider themselves radical will start saying stuff like, hey, this is a great recruiting opportunity or whatever. And you'll just kind of write it down and say, okay, here's what everybody's saying. If for those of us who do not follow those groups on Twitter, or they're not in the Telegram chats, here's what they're saying, so you know. Yeah, this is just a roundup. With all due respect, this is a roundup of stuff that people, just normal mainstream politicians, are posting on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the reaction wasn't even like this after Trump got shot. Even then, the reaction was softer. Like the reaction from the mainstream is so much more intense. Obviously, Trump survived and Kirk didn't, but
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of a sign of like how much more lit up and like fired up the mainstream is compared to even a couple of years ago. Or a year
Yeah.
ago.
So, I mean, walk me through, what are some of the things being said? I mean, I'm looking at some of this, like this here again, and I'm going to quote somebody that you quote here. I'm going to read off a quote that you wrote from Fox News host Jesse Waters. Okay. I just want to say once again, news host, like a journalist, and we can think whatever we want to think about Fox News. You can have whatever sorts of opinions you want to have about Fox News. That's fine. A journalist saying they are at war with us, whether we want to accept it or not. What are we going to do about it? That is a wild thing to say. That's something, even if a politician says that, I think, damn, that man, you probably shouldn't say that. And I don't think you should say that. A journalist saying that is kind of, I'm going to say it's unusual. And then going on to say everybody's accountable. The politicians, the media. I'm going to take a quick side here to say that if you are on Fox News, you are a part of the media, just by definition of the word. Okay. And my little parenthetical diegesis here. Okay. And all these rats out there. Like, call people rats. Call them rats all day, man. Do it. You're the media, but also saying everybody's accountable. what are we doing here?
Right. I mean, it felt in that moment, and it has continued to feel like this has been used as a pretext, or is being used as an excuse to kind of do what they want us to do, which is go hard after the left, right?
Right.
Um, we've heard a lot about leftist. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm being a bit gaslit, or like we're all being a bit gaslit by kind of things that these lawmakers and influencers are saying, because they're saying, oh, the right, it's the left who are making violent threats against officials. It's the
Mm-hmm.
left who are engaged in like harassment campaigns and political violence. It's the left who are domestic terrorists. But the data fully doesn't support that. Like it just doesn't support that. And so it's wild to see them kind of twisting everything that we know to be major issues with the right space, and
Yeah.
kind of just putting them onto the left is really wild to see.
Yeah. And then of course we've got, I suppose we can, what the heck, I'll click the video, why not?
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God.
Okay. There's a lot in there. There's actually so much in there that, like, there's 5 things I wanted to talk about, and I feel like I forgot about 4 of them by the time we hit the end of the video.
Today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity.
Each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity. Okay, conceivably, we mean maybe one person. Conceivably.
And to other
Right.
political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well.
Political violence and those who contribute, who fund it and support it. Support it, that's really broad. That's really, really broad. An organization that supports what one calls political violence, including, if we're talking about what Trump and a lot of other people have called violent protests, which, protests in LA, which I have been to, that have not been violent. Did a couple Waymos get set on fire? Yes. Violence against like human beings, personally speaking, as somebody who's been out there with cameras, haven't seen it, but it has been characterized as such. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. Talk to me, because there's too much here.
Well, someone in the chat pointed out rightfully that he did not mention, when he's talking about victims of political violence, he did not talk about the 2 Democratic lawmakers from Minnesota who were murdered with their spouses in June.
Right.
Other big examples of political violence, January 6th, obviously, but like that's just like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, you
yeah.
know what? Let's go right to that, because there's yet again somebody. Have you seen this yet?
Oh, I did see that. I did. I thought it's possible that maybe he like just like didn't hear, but I also hadn't seen. I need to watch the full clip there.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's watch it, because it is possible. It is possible, right? But let's go
Yeah.
ahead.
All of the moving ways that this White House has paid tribute to Charlie Kirk. Right. Do you think it would have been fitting to lower the flags to half-staff when Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota House Speaker, was gunned down by an assassin as well?
I'm not familiar. Oh,
The Minnesota House Speaker, a Democrat, who was assassinated this summer.
Well, if the governor had asked me to do that, I would have done that. But the governor of Minnesota didn't ask me. I didn't.
On Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet, or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. He appointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
Had the governor of Minnesota asked me to do that, I would have done that gladly.
And given the killing of Melissa Hortman, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the attack on Gabby Giffords, the attack on the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, why make the case that violence is only on one side? It seems to be taking place.
I didn't say it's on one side, but I say the radical left causes tremendous violence, and they seem to do it in a bigger way. But the radical left really is caused a lot of problems for this country. I really think they hate our country. Okay, yeah, please.
So, little hard to parse there. Often, a lot of things Trump says are a little hard to parse, but given an opportunity to talk about political violence of all sorts, it's dragged right back to this is what the radical left is doing. And then, of course, what even is the radical left? Who are we even talking about here? But yeah, how does this, I mean, is that surprising at all, given what you'd been listing out in your article?
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly surprising. I mean, they've also, I've been wondering that you see Stephen Miller being like, we're going to go after every radical left organization, progressive group who's responsible for this. It's like, which ones? Like, I don't even know if they know.
Right.
But what's kind of frightening is that they're drawing also like a parallel between like people who call Charlie Kirk a Nazi and as saying that kind of they're to blame for it. So there's this like uneasy kind of relationship between the speech and I guess trying to criminalize. I mean, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, said she vowed to crack down on hate speech yesterday because of leftist violence, which hilariously a lot of MAGA people were like, whoa, 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 whoa. let's not go that far. But like, there's been some speculation, right? Like they've been I see some people in the chat talking about like historical comparisons, and there have been comparisons online I've seen made to Horst Wessel, who was a Nazi who was murdered by communists and was kind of used as was kind of martyred and was kind of turned into a symbol for the movement and used as a kind of pretext to go after political opponents violently. I don't know enough about Horst Wessel to bloviate really about the specificity, but I do think that there are historical comparisons to be made about like the way that these kinds of incidents are used as pretext to advance a political agenda.
Yeah. So maybe here we can do what seems to have been getting a lot of people targeted, but also that a lot of it's weird. Basically, maybe we can talk about briefly who Charlie Kirk was. It is September 16th. It's been not quite a week yet since he was shot and killed. How can we talk about Charlie Kirk?
Well, obviously, I think what you're referring to was there is this like lionization of him by media outlets who should know better
Mm,
in the days following. I think there was kind of like this knee jerk. There was a kind of 180 from after seeing that people were getting so much backlash towards kind of pointing out as bigotry right up front. Then they kind
mhm.
of people were overly cautious.
So this came out on the 11th. And so here it is. Charlie Kirk, in his own words. Let's just take a quick tour down here. Let's look at some of these, right? On race. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. If you're a WNBA pot-smoking black lesbian, do you get treated better than the United States from Marine? Happening all the time. You know what? Let's play the clip. I'm not gonna repeat him. Let's play this particular clip.
Now, were they trying to hijack her? Were these blacks trying to go rob her? Happening all the time in urban America. Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more.
That's just something the dude said. All right, let's move on. Let's do another one. Here we go.
They wanted to give her cross-sex hormones. They wanted to give her testosterone therapy. They wanted to cut off her breasts. They wanted to do all these sorts of things. And these doctors do this without any thought whatsoever. Yeah, sure. Here's the script. Here's the clinic. Go here. Go for surgery. These doctors need to be put in prison quickly. We need to have a Nuremberg-style trial for every gender-affirming clinic doctor. We need it immediately.
Nuremberg-style trial. Do we have no more pictures here or videos here? Let's see. The American Democrat Party hates this country. They want to see it collapse. They love it when America becomes less white. The Great Replacement Strategy, which is well underway every single day in our southern border, is a strategy to replace white rural America with something different. These are things that he said. These are not cherry picked. I mean, if one wanted to cherry pick, one would have to do a whole bunch of cherry picking because it's a long list of this. Something also really interesting is I saw a pretty interesting comment on Facebook, which I know Facebook, but Guardian posted this on. You know what? I don't want to show their name actually, so I'm just gonna read this to you because I don't necessarily want to show their name because who knows, man. What you say about people when they die says a lot more about you than them. This article is de facto trying to justify his murder because you disagree with his point of view. Instead of focusing on the crime like a normal newspaper article would, you are focusing on his positions. All he did was debate with people. Coming back to this article, which again is just a list of some of the things he has said, including, and this is something that has come up a lot, something he said about 2 years ago on gun violence. I think it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Okay. So this is something that people have been doing, some people have been doing, right? After Charlie Kirk was murdered, some people have not even necessarily made any commentary. They've actually just posted a quote of something he has said. Objectively, this is something he said. But it does seem like that's becoming becoming cause for some people to get harassed for that very same thing.
Or fired.
Yeah, actually fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then also, as you said, I mean, you said something I think maybe even more important is people who should know better are doing this, are lionizing him, right? Sort of infamously at this point, New York Times saying, Ezra Klein saying that Charlie Kirk was practicing politics the right way. Just having a debate. Right. What do you make of that? Why is it that we're seeing so many places, as you say, that should know better, kind of papering over what he was actually saying?
I mean, first of all, with Kirk, like, if I was going to do like give like a very generous read of him, I'd say that maybe when he first started out in this in 2012, he was more interested in actually debating policy, right? I mean, I do think that like his kind of his origin story, right, is that he got rejected from West Point and he blamed it on affirmative action. So there is still all that, but I do think that um, I've he radicalized over the last decade, and I think that's kind of in keeping with the broader radicalization of MAGA. So even if they're like, okay, yeah, this kid just like loves to debate people, maybe that was a bit true back in 2016, to be
Mm.
generous to him, but that it was not the case for anyone who had been watching what he'd been saying or watching his rhetoric, and certainly the last like couple of years.
Right.
But I do think that there's this like, the left doesn't want to be associated with political violence, or it's a very liberal thing of being like, oh, we're nothing, that like it's kind of keeping up appearances, basically. So they're like, okay, we don't want to stoop to the rights level by kind of celebrating any kind of political violence, so um, we're just going to lionize this guy and decry political violence and then call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, okay, and you're probably seeing the same questions that I'm seeing in here, which is basically, to summarize some of the questions we're seeing from the chat, is the kind of, again, papering over who Charlie Kirk was by people who, again, should know better. Portraying him just as somebody who, hey, he just wanted to have a debate, and that is what American democracy is founded on: is people disagreeing about ideas. Might some of that be people being afraid of editorial repercussions, which is to say, you say something, you go a little bit too hard in an article, and you get fired?
Maybe. I think there's also, I mean, personally, I didn't think that people like joking about him getting shot in the immediate aftermath was appropriate. I don't want to
Mm.
say that like you have to be like, oh, what a saint, but I think that even if no matter what you think of him, you can see this act as a dangerous sign of the times we're living in, and fear the repercussions, which we're seeing, right, in terms of the
Yeah.
rhetoric and the crackdown on the left, or the efforts to twist this into an act of leftist violence when we'll get into later, we know very little about what the shooter actually was about.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
what was your first question? Sorry, I feel like I
oh, no. I think that's, you're answering that there. I think, well, listen, we should, I'll say this, and you don't have to back me up on this at all. This is my personal opinion, right? Because you said yours. I'm going to say my personal opinion. My take here is that if you're against extrajudicial political killing, and I think most people are, right? I don't think you can find a whole lot of people who are willing to say that, yeah, if you say something that is bad enough, you should be killed out in public in the street. Just no judge, no jury, just one executioner. Somebody can decide, I don't like that, I'm going to shoot them. Most people would probably at least not admit to thinking that's okay, right? You should then be also able to say, Charlie Kirk did a lot of things, said a lot of things that genuinely hurt people. Like, these are things that cause people to have their lives ruined, to have their jobs, losing their jobs, mobs being sent after them, people actually being assaulted, right? These are things that actually happened. These are not hard to find. They're all actually documented, right? And I say that because Turning Point USA actually had a website that said, here are some people who are doing things that are dangerous or bad, like, professors and stuff like that. You should be able to say, oh yeah, man, he said some things that probably very conceivably led to people being hurt, maybe not even physically hurt. And certainly we should say, can I link a murder to Charlie Kirk? I can't. Can I tell you some people who got hurt because of some things that he espoused? I don't think that's that hard to do. Can I tell you some people whose lives were ruined? Definitely. Easy, right? You can say,
Yeah.
you should be able to say, I think you should be able to say, Charlie Kirk did a lot of things that hurt people, but even so, even he doesn't deserve to die like that.
Yeah.
That to me is an uncontroversial thing to say, right? That if you truly believe that there is, free speech should exist, you should be able to say free speech should exist even for the person who did some stuff that admittedly is pretty bad. Like, this is some bad stuff, and then call it a day. Because, again, my take, that for me is an even stronger affirmation of what you believe. You know what I mean? Like, if you truly believe that, hey, political violence is wrong, then being able to say, yo, this shouldn't happen to somebody, even though I really disagree with him. Like, you shouldn't have to paper over what he said. You say, yo, here's some bad stuff he did. Even that person should not be harmed. Yeah. And if you can't do that, then, like, what are we doing here? We're back at square one. And it's just,
right.
Do you just think that it's bad when somebody you agree with is hurt or killed? Or is it less bad when somebody who you really don't like is hurt or killed? And it seems like that's the path we're, and I say we, I mean literally America, by virtue of things that American politicians, elected officials are saying. It seems like that's the direction we're headed.
Right. Right.
And but I also want to make some room for something else. This is something I saw online, and I wonder, this is maybe going to get into the conversation of like Gropers and stuff like that, because I know there's some people who are interested in that. But this is something I saw online. I don't know necessarily how much stock to put in this. Not necessarily stock to put in, but because I don't know this person, we're just going to put like a little bit of a caveat of that on here. But let's just read this. So this is something posted on Blue Sky. Shout out Blue Sky. But this is something somebody posted. All right. One thing that has become very clear since yesterday is we live in at least two different realities. Talking to a friend who only knew Charlie as a Christian motivational speaker because that's all that ever came on her across her feed. She showed me videos I've never seen before of him saying perfectly reasonable and empowering things. I showed her videos she'd never seen before of his racism, misogyny, homophobia, advocating for violence against specific groups of people. She was horrified by his remarks about Pelosi's husband's attacker being bailed out and celebrated for his violent act. She was horrified by a number of things that he said, but she had never heard or seen them before, the same as I had never heard or seen the generalized clips of him sounding like a perfectly nice, loving man and father. Neither of us had the whole picture of this man. I mentioned he was a known white supremacist, and she thought I was joking. She talked about him giving a speech about finding your purpose and doing good in the world, and I thought she was joking. So I agree. Journalists, we should know better. If you're writing about this guy who is as though he just showed up to college campuses and said, hey, what do you think about this? I think A. Do you think B? Whoa, isn't that weird? Let's shake hands. That's not what was happening, right?
Right.
What do you think, though, about the possibility that there might genuinely be some people out there who don't really, I think there's a lot of people who never heard of this dude. Truly never heard of this guy. But also, if they did know him, really had only seen a few things.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question because it's like I even feel like this, like going through social media, and I feel like I'll see some videos of him engaging with someone in good faith, right? Or like debating someone, and I'm like, oh, that's actually like a fair conversation he's having, or
right.
with his kids, like being a good father, and then I scroll down, and then I'm reminded immediately that this is a guy who used his massive platform to punch down on some of the most vulnerable communities. But it is really strange to be kind of caught between these two realities, which we often are with almost anything these days. But in terms of actually who Charlie Kirk is to people. But I also wonder, like, if that's also giving people too much credit, like if that people are so numb to some of the kinds of things that he was saying like the demeaning, horrible things that it just washes over them, right?
I mean, I also think there's a way in which the kind of kind, wholesome stuff, seeing somebody play with his kids or whatever, and then, oh, this really nice guy also thinks that all these Mexicans are coming here to replace me.
Right.
Like, whoa. And I've spoken to people like this, or I've spoken to people like this, and I've been in the same room with it, where people have said, oh yeah, Democrats want to bring over all these illegals so that they'll vote Democrat and then replace all of us. And it's just, where planet are you on? We're in Michigan. That's not happening. Nobody's putting a bunch of Mexican dudes and women and kids on buses to come and that's not happening. That's not happening. Just because you went down the street and you heard a little bit more Spanish than you normally hear, or that you used to hear 20 years ago, the Democrats, like the Democratic Party we're talking about here, is not, frankly speaking, I don't think they're capable of that. I'm just talking like logistically, I mean, there's a lot of things that, man, I'm not sure if they could punch their way out of a wet paper bag at this point, but getting that many people on a bus and some long-term strategy to replace white people is categorically super weird. But yeah, like I've been in rooms where people have talked about this as though it's just baseline fact. And okay, yeah, so what should we do about this? Should we go directly and talk to the, all these people who've been brought over, or should we worry about the wall first? What should we do about this? It's just, this isn't happening. The problem that you were discussing is a non-problem. I don't know, man, start an after-school program for your kids so they can like learn math or whatever, man. Like, let's worry about something else right now. But, yeah, so I genuinely wonder that. I feel like, I mean, what's the sense that you get? Do you feel like, did people even know directly who Charlie Kirk was? I'm getting the sense that there are people who are really feeling like they need to be amped up about this person who, he had influence, certainly, but to a lay person, did people know who he was?
I think to a layperson, yes, they knew who he was, but they think they maybe knew him as like a wonderful father, or like I heard, people be like, oh, his two little girls or something, oh, like his poor babies. I think they like know him as a face of like a very prominent face. But he's everywhere as well. Like he's super prominent. He's not just in his own like right wing ecosystem. He's at events with Trump. He's everywhere.
Right.
So you don't have to know like the nitty gritty. I think it's possible that like they know the surface level, but maybe they don't really know things that he said, I guess.
Yeah. So
I guess that is possible. I think that is possible.
Right. Well, and also somebody bringing up in chat right now that, it could have been a demographic thing. You know what I mean? Like younger people, especially if you're college age, this might be a bigger factor for you because you might be hearing some of this debate stuff on campus. You might have a roommate or have a friend or somebody like that where you would not necessarily be in this milieu, but they start talking about Charlie Kirk, or they start talking about, campus stuff.
I think that everyone on the right knew who Charlie Kirk was. I don't think that everyone on the left knew who he was.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Maybe we should now talk about the, again, suspected killer of Charlie Kirk, whose name is Tyler Robinson. So I'll just say you and I were in a group chat when a lot of people were trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And one of the first things that happened was the Wall Street Journal dropped something. And yeah, tell me about, I'd love to hear what you were thinking in that moment when
like this is really, really fucking bad. Like this is a nightmare. First of all, I was like, I saw the video. I really wish I hadn't, but it was everywhere. It was everywhere, and I was like, I don't think he survives that. And it was just like, this is, no matter what happens, this is going to be a nightmare. The aftermath of this is going to be so ugly, so ugly.
Yeah.
And it was. I mean, it has been.
Yeah. That was honestly one of the first things that I thought too, is whatever happens after this is going to be really bad.
And then I have my kind of like, this is really, really cynical, but just to like cover a lot of these things, where I have like my mental bingo card of like who we think the shooter's going to be. So I'm like, okay, boomer with like a bizarre personal grievance, 19-year-old accelerationist. I just like kind of like going through different, someone upset about the Epstein files, because I was kind of going through these different possible, like like the worst version of Guess Who in the world, basically.
Right.
And obviously, you had a quick look at Kirk's Twitter, and he offended a lot of communities. He upset a lot of different. I mean, he said fucked up things about a lot of different communities in the week before he was killed. So it could have been any one of them who was maybe responding to something he said. Obviously, the nightmare scenario, given rhetoric from the right about trans people, and given the fact that the school shooter at a Christian school in Minnesota last month was transgender, and how that has sparked this whole big, really intense conversation about trans crime, and as part of this effort to sort of dehumanize and criminalize trans people. So yeah, like that, the worst case scenario in terms of the ugliness is going to be that the shooter is trans. And then we get to the Wall Street Journal thing, where they publish comments with sort of citing FBI sources saying that the bullet casings were engraved with, quote, transgender ideology.
Right.
Which was then walked back. It was walked back by a lot of outlets, and the Bureau walked it back too.
Yeah, which there's a lot to be said here about some outlets rushing to be the first to have something, and then of course about the audience's desire to have the most up-to-date, fastest information, tell me something as fast as you can type thing. Really, really, truly bad. I have no idea how that decision was made, but potentially really dangerous. Really dangerous kind of not rhetoric.
Also a very, very generous interpretation of that editorial decision would be like, okay, the FBI has been a reliable source in the past, but this is a different FBI, So so that's a very, very generous interpretation of that decision. But either way, it turned out to be massively irresponsible, because that is basically gospel, right? For a large portion of the internet, is that the shooter had trans ideology, whatever that is,
right,
on the bullet casings.
Yeah, and I mean, again, to put maybe a finer point on this being a different FBI. I mean, we'll bring it up here. FBI Director Kash Patel, and somebody in the chat mentioned this. They were very much not happy about this, given their own military experience. Saying, where is this? Last leader might, basically Kash Patel saying, we have the watch and I'll see you in Valhalla. I think there's a way in which talking about this can just sort of devolve into a clown show, and so I don't want to go any further down that street, you know what I mean? And so I'm just gonna bring us back. But
good.
Yeah, truly, like I don't want this to just like, hey, let's laugh at the funny thing, because in some ways it's funny, but some ways it's genuinely bad. But yeah, it's a different FBI, and once again, journalists should know better. This is a different FBI. Sad to say, maybe it's always been this way, but certainly in this kind of case, FBI is not necessarily a reliable source. And as a journalist, you got to know when somebody's a reliable source and when they're not. It's like, okay, if somebody says something, show me the paperwork. Like I want to see the paperwork before I'm just going to go off of a little side rumor or a text or something like that. But so there are theories that are running around, and I think one of the big things that I think maybe people don't quite understand is how much just online culture plays into this. So I'll just ask you directly, what do we know now and how are you looking at it?
So what we know now, okay, so I wrote things down just because I wanted to be
Yes.
super specific.
Yeah.
So we know now that about what was actually engraved on the
Right.
bullet casings. One was "Hey fascist" catch with some arrows, which I understand is a reference to Helldivers 2, which I have not played, but I have understood that it's a satire of fascism and that the arrows are a command line for sending a specific bomb to enemies.
Right.
So that's the first one. Second one is notices bulges, OWO, what's this? And that is a reference to a furry roleplay meme from 2015, which is like, you got to be like deeply, deeply ingrained in online culture to
Yeah.
know that. Or you're probably ingrained in some pretty ridiculous places on the internet to have that. Then then another one had Bella Ciao, which is the name of an old anti-fascist Italian anthem. It's been used in modern times by German anti-fascists at an anti-AFD rally. It appears in Far Cry 6, apparently. It is also a Groper meme and that song appeared on Nick Fuente's Spotify playlist. And then another one said, if you're reading this, you're gay, lol, or lemao. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah. LMAO. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of that's like basically what we know about this person. And I guess, that like, it's interesting because it almost feels like it was designed to create as much chaos as possible in response and that is exactly what's happened because you have half the internet who are like, oh, look at these leftist references. It's definitely a leftist shooter for sure. We can take that narrative and run with it. And then you have
Right.
people on the left who are like, oh, this Groper reference and plus this old photo of him posing as Pepe the Frog, plus the fact that Gropers hate Charlie Kirk. Maybe he's a Groper or he's a right wing Groper.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that the truth of it is probably much weirder and murkier um, than this kind of like left versus right paradigm allows for.
Yeah. So maybe we should back up a little bit. I think some here in the chat are familiar with Groypers. If so, bless you. Truly bless you. I just, what the things you have seen, I do not, I'm sorry for your loss of your sanity. But Groyper, what, for those, and there may be somebody who are in here who don't fully know what a Groyper is. This is something that you, again, for better or for worse, have had to be pretty familiar with in your own work. What is a Groyper and what beef might they have with Charlie Kirk? Just to talk
I've been
about
out
that
here-
part of the conspiracy thing.
I've been out here collecting brainworms for years just to find a moment to
Again,
shine.
bless you.
So Groypers are far right acolytes of Nick Fuentes, who is a neo-Nazi live streamer. I think everyone knows who Fuentes is, and they basically view Charlie Kirk and TPUSA as fake conservatives, that they are overly beholden to cancel culture because they have rules against explicitly racist statements in their code of conduct. And so there's been this kind of war for the war for the minds of young white men, I'd say, happening between Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes. And the Groypers aggressively went after TPUSA. Like they probably harassed them more than anyone else, threatened them. There's like they're called the Groyper Wars. So there was the Groyper Wars of, I want to say 2019, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, 2019. I think 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the kind of background on what the Groypers are. And they're a miserable online community.
And so this is something, again, that this would be basically, to really, really broad brush here, infighting on the right. Very broad brush, right? Because we're talking about, I think fair to say, extremists saying that Charlie Kirk is not extreme enough. That he doesn't actually, he's not actually taking it far enough. He's fake. He's here with all, he actually respects black people and women. We don't. That broad brush here. And so that was, and so this is something that I've seen, right, is sort of a left response saying, this is obviously a groyper. This person wasn't a leftist. So you have the Trump administration and what is now mainstream politics in America blaming this on the left. And then I think some people on the left who are online enough to understand what a groyper is saying, this has nothing to do with us. This is clearly groyper. It's so murky.
And we see it a lot where it's like, no, he's one of yours. No, he's one of yours. It's like, it's this like your team, no, your team. Like this need for things to be really clear cut, and I think it's also like an instinctive desire. Like things need to be labeled, neatly labeled, and put into a box. Whereas I think what we've seen, what I think we're seeing with this and with other, honestly, with like other recent shootings as well, that like there isn't like a clear ideology. Like there isn't really, it's like an incoherent ideology, and it just seems like this person was marinating in some really stupid parts of the internet and was just like a shit poster. When like in a lot of those spaces that they are just truly apolitical, where caring about politics at all is like highly, highly frowned upon, So it's like a very like nihilistic thing. And so maybe, I mean, he could, who knows? We still don't know what the motive is, but it seems to me, I think that he was just like someone said in the chat, like just a shit poster.
Yeah. I mean, and this is one of the things, and I like, and again, bless you if you also do, but if you understand, even at this point, 4chan culture is kind of mainstream now, but if you understand any of that, or if you were again, bless you if you were there in the trenches, like the early 2000, mid 2000s or whatever, it was a sign of not understanding the board's culture to care about anything. Like if you really, you're a real Nazi, like you're a literal Nazi, how, to use the now word like cringe, like you really care about this stuff that much? I don't care about anything.
Right.
Like that was the philosophy, the whole, like, people forget the whole, oh, you're Jimmy's a Russell type stuff. Like, you actually care about this? This bothers you? I don't care about anything. Look at me. I just breathe in, breathe out. I watch weird gore videos. I watch all this other stuff. I don't care about any of this. And some of this stuff just it's not always coherent. But I do, however, understand the desire. I should say I do understand, cards on the table, understand the desire, say, from a leftist perspective to, ooh, no, this dude ain't one of us. Like push this away. Specifically because, for example, I mean, let's come back to this and just see some of the stuff that's been said even somewhat recently. Again, the bullets had trans ideology on it. Then you get said very well here. This is in a Mother Jones article. Laura Loomer, it's September 13th, right? So fairly recently, September 13th, Laura Loomer, a conspiracy theorist with significant influence in the Trump administration, posts on X that transgender people are a, quote, threat to society. And then, quote, it's time to designate the transgender movement as a terrorist movement.
Yeah.
Those are really heavy words. And I say that specifically because one of the things that the administration has been doing is they have been designating cartels terrorists. And I think and then look at what happened like in international waters, like blowing up a boat, not picking them up, not saying, hey, I think y'all got drugs on here. Let's arrest all of y'all and confiscate everything, but just blowing it up twice now. The word terrorism has always had a lot of weight, particularly since 9/11. But I would say again now, first off, and we really have to break this down. What even is a transgender movement? That's just a lot of things that don't actually even exist. Like legitimately, what is a transgender movement? Are you telling me that every single trans person is in like a secret group chat and they're all decide like there's a what they're making decisions? There's like a trans council where they all say, yeah, we're gonna do this and we do that. No.
Trans Tifa, that's what you hear now.
Trans Tifa is sadly a new one. Oh boy, for me. Okay. All right. It's a new one for me. I was lucky enough to not have heard that. But yeah. So thank you. You do this a lot, Tess, as you tell me things I wish I didn't know. But yeah, like saying that there is a transgender movement, what does that even mean? But precisely because it is incoherent, it doesn't actually make sense. Is okay. Now you can just say that what is every person who is trans a terrorist? And if so, what do we do to terrorists? We've seen what we do to terrorists. You kill them extrajudiciously. We're back at square one. What are we even doing here?
I mean, first of all, there's no domestic terror law, really, with like a few exceptions. So that's good news. Like generally, terrorist groups have to have a international nexus for them to be designated terrorist groups. So that's good for now. But in terms of like the implications of that kind of language is like very scary. And one thing I feel like for a while, especially with this administration, I was like, oh no, they're not really going to do that. They're not really going to do that. I felt like maybe like a bit like numb from the last few years or something. Anyway, what I have come to just believe, like when they say what they're going to do, believe them. Like when they say they're going to do something, that's what they're going to try and do. Like, I mean, here is a lot of bluster, and there are luckily like institutional safeguards in place still, barely, but it is frightening, and yeah.
I know we've been talking for a bit, and so there's a couple things I want to get to. Just some questions. So I posted this on Instagram. Sorry for blowing up your Instagram notifications.
No, it's great. It's great. I'm trying to. I have a new professional Instagram because I'm trying to keep things separate. So it's great. It's actually really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I posted it to. No, I know. I know you got a couple. Yeah. No, I'm not trying to blow up your Finsta. Nah, we know. But one. Okay. So I want to pick up some of these. And by the way, we're in the QA session. We got the professor here, Professor Tess Owen. By the way, I'm just the TA. And so let me wrap up some of the conversation, pick up a loose end here. But one is why, this is a question asked on Instagram for you, but why is it, do you think, that people can't seem to agree whether Charlie Kirk was just a moderate guy, a moderate who liked having debates, or an extremist?
I think it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, like these different realities that we're operating in. I mean, there's first of all, well, actually, let me walk that back. First of all, I think we have completely different. The definition of extremism is like very confused now, and so like what people. I mean, the bar for extremism has moved so much, and extremism has become so mainstreamed that things that Charlie Kirk has been saying in the last 2 years, 10 years ago, would have been extreme. And it's really, really important, I think, to remember how far how far, I guess, like the window of what's acceptable has shifted. And I think the people on the right have become very radicalized to that, or very, very numb to it. And then we're living in two separate worlds where he is like a family man, and like we said earlier, like a guy who debates in good faith and the best guy ever, which is how he's been kind of portrayed by his friends on the right. And on the other side, it's people, yeah, like he was a bully who used his position of his great significance and massive audience to punch down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything else to add to that. I want to jump to another question. Just kind of lightning round here. Do we think that, okay, just again, you having covered extremism, having covered this kind of thing, somebody asks, has mainstream tolerance of disingenuous, their words, hateful people, emboldened them or emboldened the rhetoric?
For sure. Yeah, without a doubt. Like I was saying, the stuff that I used to see in like on like anonymous message boards or like on the Donald, under with no identity attached to them we're now seeing from the vice president or the president, or the attorney general or the White House deputy chief of staff. It's like you don't have to go and see what the fringes are saying to know how much trouble we're in. Like why do we even need extremist groups at this point? Like why, although extremist groups did rally after Kirk was, I mean, they kind of used it as an excuse to rally.
Yeah,
but I'm like, why? But I'm like, why do we even? It's crazy that it's been like my focus, and I'm like, kind of like, who cares? But not a bunch of Nazis rallied at Huntington Beach, and they think we're chanting "Stand up for the white man" or something.
Shall
What were
we?
they chanting?
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
Look at the screen. I got
Okay,
you.
perfect.
I got you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, actually, do you know Sean?
Sean.
Sean Beckner Carmichael. Sean says hi.
Do I? Oh, hi, Sean.
Yeah. Sean says what's up. I asked him if it was okay if I pulled some of this up. But yeah, let's look at some of this. So Sean's, by the way, Sean, I'm gonna post this so y'all can check this. Sean started up. Well, this is a link to the original article. To an article
Left Coast Right
we posted.
Watch.
Yeah.
They do such good stuff.
Yeah, Left Coast Right Watch. But Sean also has a new joint called LA 10-4, which is a newsletter about first responders. So check that one out. I'll post that just after this. Video's here. I should say this is violent. Just let y'all know. You probably already surmised that, but this is going to be a little bit violent.
You know what's crazy about that? They're not covering their faces. Like,
yeah.
So many, I think that they are not covering their faces, which I think is like very significant in this context.
Definitely. Yeah. Something else that may not be obvious from watching this video is, well, I'm just going to read the description of this. So there's more of this video. It's a lot of different scenes of stuff. Again, I'll put the link in here so people can watch it. But just to read this here. One man carrying an American flag taunted the group with several others, calling them un-American and traitors. Again, they're calling the neo-Nazis traitors. Followed them to a parking garage several blocks away from the group where the group was walking through. Suddenly, about a dozen began kicking and hitting him. The group then fled into the parking garage. Okay. And you can see somebody wearing National Socialism, as in National Socialism. Yeah.
I see.
But you can see here that so we talked to the guy who got attacked.
Huh. No way.
And so he was talking to them. He was yelling at them because he hates Nazis. And so though the man espoused several conspiratorial right-wing beliefs in an interview, he told Left Coast Right Watch that the neo-Nazis that beat him up were traitors. So again, this is not like some liberal with blue hair who showed up and said, I don't like Nazis. This was a fairly, by his own admission, his own self-description, sounds like he was conservative himself, went up and said, hey, I don't like Nazis. And that's what happened. So we're, as somebody in the chat said, we are in a strange timeline. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than the other option, which is like them. It's like we're in such a bad timeline that I'm like, actually, this is good. Or like, I mean, it's better than that. It's better than them. It's better than them welcoming with opening arms, which we've seen at other. There has been. We've seen this a bit, not quite with that level of violence, but there's been a bunch of events over the years where neo Nazis have shown up, and the main, the whatever anti-drag queen group or whatever right wing group is protesting, when the
Yeah.
Nazis show up, they're like, we don't want you here. You're bad for our image. Like you're ruining our thing. And the Nazis
Right.
want to be there because they want to. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah, but how long does that last? You know what I mean? Is the perceived leftist attack, again, perceived, is there perception that all these leftist trans people are out to kill us, right? Does that mean that maybe the Nazis or the people who call themselves Nazis, maybe they have a point? Once again, I need to underline that if you were ever in a position when you were asking yourself if maybe the Nazis have a point, the answer is always no. Nazis do not have a point. Never had a point. Let me just underline that. If you're asking, maybe it had a point. Yeah, just always back up. Always back up, because the answer is always going to be no. But I think we're getting to a point where people are making that, doing some very flawed math. And the whole, on the right, you're seeing that, oh, this is caused because they called us Nazis. I have been seeing that a lot. There was a rally, a Trump rally that I was at in Michigan, and one of the opening speakers really seemed bothered by, I would say, a fairly small group of people, but basically saying, oh, they're calling us Nazis. I was like, who? Did somebody call you a Nazi? Also, people kind of do that all the time. That's just like everybody does that. People on the right do that. It's like, oh, you want people to wear masks? You're a Nazi. It gets thrown around so much, it almost doesn't have any meaning. But I just see that coming up much more recently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Well, and now they're saying that the fact that, I think Katie Miller said that, but a bunch of prominent people on the right said that, by calling Kirk and those, all of them on the right Nazis, that the media, or like drawing comparisons to different past authoritarian regimes, blah blah blah, like that you're that kind of laying the groundwork for violence against them.
Precisely. No, that's precisely what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
But then we're having the same conversation here, which is to say, okay, well then, which is it? Is it that free speech needs to exist? In which case, if it does, somebody is going to call you a Nazi. Somebody who doesn't like you is going to compare you to something that you very likely shouldn't be compared to. Okay. Or is it that it's only dangerous when the Democratic leftists, which are not the same thing, but when, the radical left is doing it, right?
Right.
I want to ask you one more question that I got from Instagram here. And this is, how do you protect your mental health from what you cover? And this is maybe a relevant question for those watching, because I hadn't seen the video, but I knew what was in it. I got warned. But even just all over, how do you protect your mental health from what you cover? And do you have any kind of recommendations for people? Because some people's, and just to add the last thing to it, some people's response to this is going to be, I need to just stop watching. I need to stop paying attention to any of this. But then there's that feeling of guilt kicks in, which, well, I got to know what's going on. How do you balance that?
I definitely went through a phase where I was like constantly plugged into it, and that was really detrimental to my mental health. Now I'm a new mum. I've got a 7-month-old baby, And it's kind of wild to be like seeing like and reading the really scary shit and then be like laptop Snapchat like mum mode, especially working from home. It's kind of wild sometimes to kind of transition in between those two different states. And then also like reflecting on the state of the world as you are sort of raising not just a little one, but like a little boy.
Yeah.
It's so kind of makes you think about the implications a bit more. But I think, yeah, give yourself like unplugging, just you can always catch up on stuff, or even like if you want to do a quick thing where you just bookmark stuff for an hour and be like, I'm going to go back to this on Monday, but like taking the time and space away from it, like because it can absorb you with like the every moment by moment development in these like ever evolving narratives. And you feel sometimes like if you log off, like you miss a chapter. But you can always catch up. Yeah.
You can. That is big. Yeah. I mean, especially with the details about, again, the suspect in this particular shooting. The details will be there on Friday. They'll be there the next Monday. You don't need to be plugged in right now on Twitter trying to figure out exactly what happened minute by minute, debating back and forth with somebody. That's honestly, in some ways, that's feeding a problem, which is places like the Wall Street Journal feeling like they just got to drop the whatever kind of information we got, even if it's not clean, good information. You know what I mean? I know there are plenty of questions, but I know we've been talking for a minute. Is there anything you feel like, I know you took a bunch of notes. Is there anything you feel like you want to add to this, or you think people should be paying attention to as the news cycle continues to churn?
I think we've covered most of it. There's all this interesting stuff which I'm going to go look at more closely that's coming out about the Discord chats that the shooter was in. But I've got to go see kind of more what's up with that stuff. There was a really interesting study I read actually about like talking about like different generations of online radicalization. How like the first generation was like 84 to mid 2000s, about which were just like bullet board systems online, and then the period after that was like social media echo chambers. And it talks about how like we're in a new one of which is kind of like a post-ideological radicalization, where people glorify the acts rather than the ideology. And I think that's interesting to remember, like as we try and like put things in these like clear ideological boxes, that actually a lot of these come from like a swamp of ideas and memes, and like they're with no clear leader, but their own very specific like language of symbols, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think the incoherence of a lot of this is something that we're going to have to understand a little bit better. But I guess with that, where would you recommend getting information from? Because this is gonna get weird. We already know this is gonna get weird. Frankly, it's gonna get dangerous. We both know that. We don't really got to get into that. To some of the questions about, is this going to become? There were some questions in the chat about, is this going to become more dangerous for journalists? Absolutely, 100%. There's no question about that. We don't got to talk about that too much. But yeah, of course. And again, and I always say this: if it is more dangerous for journalists, imagine how it is for people who do not have a press badge.
Right.
It is also going to be dangerous for anybody, right? So let me just put that there. Again, we can move on from there. But the answer to that is yes, of course. And that is something that anybody who is paying attention would have been able to make I think, pretty reasonable prediction about, is whatever happens after this is not going to be good.
Right.
Easy prediction to make, right? We'll move on from that. But if you're giving advice to the class, what's your recommendation? Where can people get good information about all of this?
I mean, you have the very reputable news outlets and really good reporters who are doing like very responsible work, like Wired, The Guardian, um, Rolling Stone, New Yorker, New York Times sometimes, but it's just, but also, I think that it's
404,
important to
shout out
like
404.
also, but also there's like a ton of like really good, 404 as well. There's a ton of like really good researchers who have like a wealth of knowledge on this stuff who are on
Yeah.
Blue Sky. But I mean, I think that the best is like when you see something and if it like hits that like bias confirmation, if like that part of your brain lights up too much, like, oh, he's a groper, like be like, okay, what's the evidence we've got here? Like let's just like let's take a beat and see what people are actually saying. What's the evidence? Because I think that like people are so quick to make claims, and you can find, just ask for proof.
Yeah. Is there anything that one could do to like back up a little bit? Because I think a lot of this, and I hate to say it, I'm gonna use this metaphor a little bit more, but homework type stuff. What is there something we could back up on and like is there a book? Is there a documentary? Is there something you've made that is in the past but would give somebody a little bit more insight about what it is that we're talking about here?
Ellie Reeve, our former colleague at Vice, who did the amazing, famous Vice documentary in Charlottesville, she's got a book out this year called Black Pill, which looks a lot at these communities, and I think that's like a pretty good insight into like the nihilism, like and irony of the world that I think is like at play here.
Yeah, shout out Ellie. I
Yeah.
haven't talked to her in a minute. Yeah. Anything you've done?
Oh, I don't know. just follow me on Blue Sky and
All right, okay, we can do that. We'll agree to disagree. There we go. There's some debate. There's some debate for you. Yeah. All right.
I'm on Twitter too, the bad place. I still post there, unfortunately, but
Bless you. Look at you doing the Lord. I don't know if that's the Lord's work, but it's somebody's work. You're doing work.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. So I know you were talking about a potential article that you're working about. I will be looking out for that. And I'll send that to people too. But Tess, for real, thank you so much for making so much time today. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great as always.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll talk again. Hopefully something somewhat more positive next time.
Always. Yeah.
Always.
Cheers.
All right,
bye.
Take it easy. Woo.